What's up guys, Slammer here, back with some more Littlewargame action. And today I want to be talking about a Beast vs. Rax build which I think is quite essential and important for all Beast players to have in their arsenal. It's a build that really can catch a Rax player off guard and allows you to sometimes win games outright and often get yourself a nice advantage. And it's not necessarily an all-in or cheese either, as we're going to see in a bit here. Now, just for standard openings, I skipped the first part just to get this video started a little sooner, but I just go for a pretty standard proxy 1 den. This is one of the best builds you can possibly go if you strongly suspect your opponent's going to go for a Rax play or a Rax castle first. As you can see, I'm getting a lot of nice damage done already with my wolves. I believe I picked off one worker before, and I'm going to pick off a second worker there. So quite a few workers killed and a lot of mining time lost there. Unfortunately, I mismicro these wolves trying to get that last worker, but not really important. And if you look at the units, we're actually very equal on workers because I picked off the units lost. I picked off 3 workers, which is more than you'd expect to get in a standard Beast versus Rax. So a little bit sloppy by Dragon Archer Z here. By the way, I'm playing against Dragon Archer Z. And yeah, that's a little bit more than you'll usually get, and it puts the Beast player in a pretty nice position. So once I've gone for this proxy den, I just add several more dens at my main base. And the idea behind this build is to get 5 dens total and put on a large amount of pressure using wolves and snakes. And usually the goal of this 5 den is twofold. You can either try to cancel a greedy third base if the Rax player goes very greedy, or you can catch out a overly aggressive Rax player who hasn't done his due diligence scouting, which I believe we may see in this game. And this is really the main strength of the 5 den is oftentimes a Rax player will move out with 5 to 7 Rax units and put pressure on the Beast player. And if the Beast player is going for, say, a very quick castle and you don't quite have enough units to defend, you can just lose the game straight out. And it's definitely a fairly scary pressure to deal with, and it forces you to build more units than perhaps you'd like if you're going for a fast tech or a fast eco strategy. Now, the thing about this build for the Rax players, it's quite a commitment if you're able to catch out all of these units. If the Rax player loses all these units, it puts them in a very difficult situation. By the way, I should point out that Dragon Archer Z is going for Raiders with the build that he's chosen here. So he's going for pretty strong 2-base play as a result. He's going to be harassing with these Raiders and putting pressure on with his main Rax force. Meanwhile, I've stopped at 20 workers and I'm just adding on more and more dens. I'm up to 5 den, which is the magic number, allows you to pump out a ton of units off of 2 bases. And the key to this build is just keep adding more and more houses as you produce, and you can quickly get up to 60, even 70 supply worth of Rax, worth of Beast units, excuse me. I've also added on a snake den, so this is a pretty dedicated pressure. Now, I'm sending my units down to strike at his 3rd base to try to get that cancel off. Meanwhile, Dragon Archer Z is trying to put harass on with his Raiders. Raiders 3-hit workers, so they're quite strong at harassment. And he's also picking off one of my dens there in the middle of the map. Obviously, one of the weaknesses of a proxy den is you'll usually have that building can get picked off often. But I'm doing a lot of damage on the other side of the map, even though his soldier doing a little bit of harassment. It doesn't really matter because I've been able to pick off several Raiders and other units, and whenever you're killing units as the Beast player, you're pretty happy because you can replace your units far swifter than the Rax player can. You can see he's only on 2 barracks and he's sitting at 50 supply, whereas I'm already up to a nice 60 supply worth of Beast units. And even looking at the worker count, he hasn't been adding on very many workers because he's been so dedicated to his Raider play here. One thing I'd like to note is when you're playing this style, you take a very late third base. Your third base is definitely going to be later, but you can actually end up in a fairly decent economic position because while you won't really be able to afford much tech, you can add workers as you go and get up to say 24 to 26 workers before you can get your third base down. And that means even though your base will be later, hopefully you can do a good amount of damage on the other side of the map, perhaps pick off workers, get an army advantage, and then as soon as the third base goes up, even though you've taken a much later third base, you're still going to have actually a decent economic position. And you can see that Dragon Archer Z has identified the build order I'm going for, and as a result, he's basically just playing completely defensively. This is quite a mistake on my part. These snakes should be backing out. Unfortunately, I was probably microing the bottom side. And just looking at it, this is a pretty good position for the Rax player. He's got nice worker lines. He's got a very strong worker lead. Overall, just a really, really solid position for the Rax player to be in. He's got his double upgrades rolling as well, so just a very, very solid position for the Rax player. And I'm just now deciding that I'm not able to break. I decide I'm not going to be able to break that force of units currently, so I'm going to get my third base rolling. Now, Ravage is a pretty good map for this build because you have such a wide expanse that the Rax player has to defend. And you're going to see that in a second here. He's correctly trying to get some towers up so he can cover this large expansive area. But he was a little bit late and was not able to get them in time. And now my beast units can really start putting some solid pressure on. The key to this 5-den is really mobility and catching him out of position. You can see he's got a large amount of units chasing my forces on the left side of the map, and that leaves his main army a bit exposed, and I'm able to just jump on it with a superior beast count. And this is really the key to the flood style. You're trying to get a overwhelming advantage on the Rax player's forces, and just leverage that production advantage that you have with your dens compared to his 3 Rax, which means he can only reinforce fairly slowly to completely defend this. Now, as the game goes later and later, the Rax player should have start gaining more and more advantage, and that's why he's building these towers, because he knows he just needs to survive and get to the later stages. But again, it takes a fairly long time for him to get all these Rax units built. So I'm sitting here at a very large supply count, whereas he is sitting at only 59 out of 70, which allows my units to take really favorable trades with large unit advantages. And you can see these 6 soldiers are just kind of dancing around, not doing anything, not dealing any damage. And this again is the real strength of the snake units as well. You can gain major advantages with a nice mixture of snake and wolf. Snakes are a very nice counter to soldiers. They can pick away at them from range, kite a little bit, and generally just deal the DPS that wolves really don't have. And you can see he's been pulling workers quite liberally here because he knows he's got a fairly decent position. He needs to get he needs to just defend and hold on. Now that he's got his tower, he's pretty well locked down on 3 bases. He's also got a slight upgrade advantage here with, looks like, +2 speed and +1 attack on the way. Whereas I am just throwing down my upgrades right now and just playing a really all-in, almost beast style here. And this is really the classic flood style of beast, just building a ton of dens, and little cute harassment here with the raiders, causing me a little bit of trouble. Looks like he picked off 1, or maybe actually several workers, up to 4 perhaps. But I'm still at 27, so my worker count's pretty decent. He's all the way up to 38 workers. I'm not really sure why he's that high on workers. I think this is just a mistake. Yeah, just a mistake on his part to be building 38 workers. For those you don't know, you need 30 to fully saturate 3 bases. And really, you never want to go much beyond 30, because by the time you're taking a 4th base, your main is nearing lining out. So you really never want more than 30. 33 at the most, so you can have 3 on an early 4th base. And towers die so quickly to beast units that I just can right-click on them and kill them in literally seconds. As you can see, the snakes DPSing those tower cores down at extreme speeds. I've cut through a lot of his soldier forces. He's been forced to build a lot of archers here to counter the snakes, which leaves these archers are very, very weak to wolves now. They can fight snakes very well, but generally you don't want to be fighting too much with archers without support. Now that he has the +2 speed, though, he can kite fairly efficiently with these archers because his units are so swift now that he has the upgrade. What you can see him doing now, he's picking off units as much as he possibly can. He's also been able to add on priests as this goes on. But because he has so few soldiers, I'm pretty comfortable just jumping on top of his archers. Archers have very low HP, they die pretty swiftly, so I'm pretty comfortable taking this kind of fight here. Because even if I lose several snakes, I'm very happy to keep the numbers of units small. This is another really key thing that I want to touch upon when you're playing this Flood Beast style is, it's almost always good to just try to trade. As long as you're killing something, not taking a completely horrible fight, you always take the fight, because you can replace these fairly cheap wolf and snake units very, very swiftly, whereas the Rax player is going to have a whole lot of trouble replacing his army. So even if you're trading 3 wolves for an archer or 3 snakes to a soldier, that's actually still a really decent trade, and you can that's pretty fine. So Dragon Archer Z I think he feels like he realizes that he's got way too many workers for one, and so he's deciding to just pull them and try to catch me off guard with a pressure. But I've got so many dens that I'm going to be able to take this fight pretty comfortably, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to pull anything out here. His soldier numbers are pretty low, and his archers are now going to get caught behind with wolves. Always good to try to flank with wolves in the back and get them on top of archers, because they're one of the units that can chew through archers really, really quickly, especially in low numbers. Healing Ward is not going to help at all, and the Rax units are just going to fall apart and die. And Dragon Archer Z is going to have to be forced to tap out. And the Beast is victorious once again. So yeah, I think this 5-den is a really essential build, because it really forces the Rax player to be much more careful with his units. The Rax player is going to have a lot harder time trying to do any kind of 2-base aggression, or macro 3rd base. They kind of poke out with 5 or 6 units. If they poke too far and they get surrounded and killed because you have such a superior unit count, it almost means the game is over at that point. It's very hard for the Rax player to recover from losing that many units early, and it really forces them to be much more careful with their play, and allows you to, it kind of opens up more build order possibilities as well, just in general, just knowing that you're capable of pulling out that kind of 5-den. And in addition, it not only is very strong at denying thirds and trading, it actually is not that bad macro-wise. You can add workers up to like 24 or so, and then add that 3rd base fairly late, and as long as you trade well on the other side of the map, you actually find yourself in a fairly even position. Because your units are fairly cheap, you can actually afford to take that 3rd base a little bit later, and it shouldn't hurt you too much. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and I will catch you all later.